Today is June 1st. I'm Diane Sare, president of the LaRouche Organization. I thought I would take a moment to get out a very important briefing, something for Americans to consider right now, which is whether Senators Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal are guilty of sedition, whether they are colluding with rogue elements of the CIA to sabotage President Trump's stated intention to end the Ukraine-Russia war. Here's the evidence. This is from the India Times today. Ukraine damaged 41 Russian warplanes via covert drone strike. Operation Spider's Web hit 4 Russian air bases deep inside Russia. Key strike at Irkutsk base over 4,300 kilometers from the front lines. Russia has acknowledged the strikes. The Russian Defense Ministry confirmed that Ukraine had launched drone attacks against military airfields across 5 regions: Murmansk, Irkutsk, Ivanovo, Ryazan, and Amur. Now, how do the senators fit into this? Well, please remember that Lindsey Graham has been one of the biggest champions of arming Ukraine. In fact, he said it's relatively cheap to kill Russians, and it's good for the U.S. economy to producing weapons that are going to put us on the brink or across the brink of thermonuclear war. And well, who cares if 1.5 million Ukrainians are dead? That's really not our problem. That's his despicable attitude. What many of you may not be aware of is not only do he and Blumenthal have a bill in the Senate, which shows you, by the way, why you should have elected me for U.S. Senate either time when I ran against Schumer or Gillibrand. They have a bill in the Senate co-sponsored now by 82 people, i.e. a veto-proof majority to impose 500% tariffs on any nation that trades, I think mostly petroleum or oil or with Russia. So this has not yet been introduced. The Wall Street Journal did a pile-on demanding that this be forced to a vote by Senator Thune. That so far has not happened. But what you may not know is these 2 senators, Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal, took Memorial Day weekend not to honor the American dead and to uphold the principles of the U.S. Constitution and Declaration of Independence, but to fly to Kiev to meet with a fascist dictator, Zelensky, who has revived the legacy here on the 80th anniversary of the defeat of Adolf Hitler, has revived the legacy of Stepan Bandera, a famous collaborator of Hitler, to do what? Well, were they encouraging him to launch these strikes? Were they telling him that the CIA was going to provide the intelligence and backing? It is impossible that Ukraine could have carried out these strikes without guidance from the CIA, perhaps the French, perhaps MI6. President Trump needs to give his Director of National Intelligence full authority to haul these people in and fire them. He must give the orders for the CIA to stand down to demonstrate that they are not acting according to his orders. What Scott Ritter, former UN weapons inspector and former U.S. Marines intelligence officer, says in his latest Substack, President Trump, who has been campaigning to support a peace process between Russia and Ukraine, must now decide as to where the United States stands considering these developments. His Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has acknowledged that under the previous administration of Joe Biden, the United States was engaged in a proxy war with Russia. Trump's special envoy to Ukraine, Keith Kellogg, recently acknowledged the same about NATO. In short, by continuing to support Ukraine, both the U.S. and NATO have become active participants in a conflict which has now crossed the threshold regarding the employment of nuclear weapons. That is an expert opinion. That is the danger we are now in if the CIA and these rogue elements of our own government. And who are these other 82 US senators who are going along with this? This must stop now. There should be an investigation between the collaboration of Senators Blumenthal and Lindsey Graham with the CIA to provide intelligence for this strike on Russia, to sabotage President Trump's efforts toward getting an end to this war and putting us in danger of thermonuclear war. The CIA should be investigated, hauled in, fired, whatever has to be done to get them under control. This insanity must stop.